Welcome to the City Current Show. I'm your host, Jeremy Park. We're always honored to bring you inspiring stories of individuals and organizations making a difference and powering the good. And we love talking about nonprofits and boards and helping you become more successful with your board service. And that's the topic for today. Indeed, we're honored to be joined by TD Smyers, Regional Partnership Development with BoardBuild. And we'll talk all about BoardBuild, but how are you doing, TD?
I'm doing great, Jeremy. I'm glad to be on this today and discussing BoardBuild with you. But it's a pretty good day to be inside here in North Texas.
So you are based out of North Texas, and we'll talk about all the work that you all are doing really nationwide and you're equipping really nonprofits, but also too, obviously, individuals and corporate leaders to be more successful with their board service. We'll talk about that in a second, but give us a little bit of your background and how you got associated with BoardBuild. Let's start there.
Sure. So I'm actually a career naval officer. I did 31 years as a Navy flyer, finished up as a captain, retired, and got into nonprofit leadership. I definitely didn't want to go the route that a lot of my contemporaries went, which was kind of going out and marketing a Rolodex to a defense contractor and kind of getting into that world. I was more interested in taking what the Navy had taught me for 31 years and continuing to serve. So got out, went up as a regional CEO for the North Texas region of the American Red Cross, served in that capacity for 4 years. And then that was out of an office in Dallas. And then was recruited to take over United Way of Tarrant County, a major market United Way organization on the other side of the DFW Metroplex in Fort Worth, which was really my home. So that was a great move. And I took that in. And then after I did that for 4 years, in which the BoardBuild idea sprung from that role, my wife and I took off and went sailing in a catamaran for 3 years. And then recently just came back home. And when I got back, I opened up a consultancy as an executive coach and began working on business development for BoardBuild. So that's me and what I'm doing now.
But it also helps paint the picture of you seeing these gaps. And when I talk about, the gaps on the nonprofit side, it's equipping individuals to serve so that they know board service 101, what they're getting themselves into, the roles, the responsibilities, and those pieces. And then also, too, when you look at it for the nonprofit side, trying to find those who are obviously passionate about the mission, who are equipped to serve, who know what they're getting themselves into in terms of the responsibilities and can step in, day one and hit the ground running. But also, too, diversity and trying to get different individuals on these boards. And so there's a lot of gaps when you talk about board service and helping nonprofits thrive.
Right.
Give us kind of your vantage point on that topic.
Sure. So nonprofits, the social sector, I call it, they have to operate in conjunction with the other sectors, right? Government and the private sector or businesses. And a lot of times you see nonprofits struggling with fundraising and people expect nonprofits to move the needle on major things like juvenile diabetes, but do it on a shoestring budget. And that just doesn't make sense. So approaching the problems in a community or in a region or a state or even in our country winds up being, it's crucial that winds up being a partnership and a collaboration between the three major economic sectors. So when I got into nonprofits, coming from a military background, I understood the role and value of leadership and how important it is to get it right. And in a nonprofit particularly, which is serving a specific community, you've got to have representation on your board where the leadership resides, where the strategy is hatched. You've got to have representation on your board of that community that you serve in order to understand those needs, to meet them at a systemic level. So when we were at United Way, when I was leading that organization, I tried intentionally to diversify my board. Now, that can be a challenge when a board has developed over time, and I'll just cut right to it. I mean, my board was all old white male bankers now who lived in Fort Worth, which is just part of Tarrant County. And there was a reason for that, because the chief executive before me and the chief executive before him were also old white male bankers who lived in Fort Worth. So it was their network that filled the board. So when I came in and wanted to intentionally diversify the board so that we could look more like and feel more like and sound more like the communities that we served, it was I looked for a tool to help me do it because, using a yellow legal pad and LinkedIn was about the only way that a lot of nonprofit executives do it. So we didn't find it. We couldn't find it anywhere in the country that's something that would automate that process and give us a trained board member that understood their role that we could then match with a nonprofit. And that's what we wanted to do, not just for us. We started just for us, but then we thought, man, this is a jewel that could work for nonprofits across the country. So that's kind of a little bit about my movement into nonprofits and what the thought process was that kind of became BoardBuild.
Yeah, and I think that sets the stage for BoardBuild. So go ahead and dive into BoardBuild and describe BoardBuild.
Sure. So as I said, we looked for a way that we could initially match people with board members, but in doing so and not finding it, we also saw that there was another gap, and that's, you touched on it in your introduction. It's a gap in nonprofit board members who are the strategic leaders of the board. They are the visionaries of the board. But if they're not properly oriented to what that means and what their role is, they can wind up getting tied up in management issues and personnel issues. They could be operating more like a small organization management board when they need to be a governing board. And so there was a need to standardize training and orientation of board members so that you have a quality product in terms of a prospective board member seat that you can now enter to the matching platform. Make sense? So we said, well, board training. You've been through some nonprofit board training? Man, I tell you, a lot of times it's like you want to just put knitting needles through your eyes because it's so excruciatingly boring. And so we wanted to create a curriculum that was based on established nonprofit governance principles, but was entertaining and engaging. So in getting into this and saying, how do we do this? What happens? I turned this over to a bunch of smart people at United Way, including my really enterprising CFO, Jeff Allison. But Jeff's one of these neat guys. He's a finance guy who the other hemisphere of his brain also works. And so he was really great about strategically looking at BoardBuild as something that could someday be brought outside of our region. But we first needed to test it, in our region. So we started building it. And basically what it is this. Somebody gets on BoardBuild to train themselves to be a nonprofit board member. Now, that somebody, as you pointed out earlier, it could be an individual. We've got a lot of individuals that do it. But the majority of the seats are corporations who have membership on nonprofit boards as part of their corporate social responsibility strategy. So they've agreed to come in and pay the freight, pay the training of their people, and when they're placed in nonprofit boards, pay their give or get, their financial obligation. So that's pretty cool. And then the third kind of client or customer for the training is a nonprofit that wants to train its current board members. So those are the people that take the training: individuals, corporate leaders who aspire to be nonprofit board members, and then people who are currently on nonprofit boards where boards can catch up. We did that at United Way. I put all of our board members through it, and then all of our prospective board members subsequently were BoardBuild graduates. You with me so far on the supply side?
Absolutely. And the touch on to the fact that this is all online, because I think that's a very important piece of this, is that anyone around the nation, and really around the world with it being online, but around the nation, has an opportunity to tap into this.
Yeah, so that's one of the neatest things, and one of the things we saw a gap in was we were doing board training face-to-face. And before the pandemic, that was really common. Most people did board training face-to-face, and you'd have to give up maybe a Thursday evening and skip your kid's softball game to go in and do board training face-to-face, and then, come back a month later and do it again. And this was all very time-consuming. It also kind of expelled people that were outside of the geographic area. They were excluded from that because they couldn't or wouldn't make the drive for over an hour to get in. And even when people started going to more virtual or hybrid training during the pandemic, it was still pretty dry, it would zoom you out pretty quickly, right? So when we wanted to create an on-demand, interactive virtual training that was entertaining, we went where you think you'd go, to an improv comedy troupe. So one of the nation's top improv comedy troupes, 4-day weekend out of Fort Worth, Texas, we partner with them and they produce these modules. So they're engaging, they're entertaining, they take dry stuff and they keep it light and they keep it entertaining. And then after each session, there's a chance to take a quiz, test your knowledge of it, and then move on at your pace. So entertaining, on demand, on your time schedule, at your pace, board training that's now standardized for your whole board, so everybody understands their roles and everybody understands what they need to establish good governance.
I like the fact too that you're becoming the gold standard when you talk about going through the training and everyone being on the same page. And then, you have the ability to basically put up on like your LinkedIn profile, BoardBuild certified. And so you become the gold standard. And so when you talk about equipping people for success right out of the get-go, and I love the fact, as you mentioned too, individuals, companies, and nonprofits, yep, this plays a powerful role for all, but having that certification as the gold standard, I think, is really important. And then carry that into then the matching side with the nonprofits.
So this is really what we were seeking initially, was the ability to automate matching. In other words, how do I find out who's out there and who wants to join a nonprofit board for any of the agencies that we served at United Way? And there was no automated way to do it, so we built it. So the second half of the BoardBuild platform is the matching platform. First, you have the training. And by the way, 2 modules are already in the training. There's BoardBuild Essentials, which is kind of like board orientation, how to read a nonprofit financial statement, what the roles of the board members are, what the relationship is between the chief executive and the board members, those kind of things. Then the second module we released in April is Governance with Equity, DEI for nonprofit boards. And these are just the first 2 modules of several that are planned, and things like risk management, nonprofit fundraising, lots of things coming down the pike. So the training is already pretty robust. It's getting more robust all the time. Now, when a prospective board member completes the training, as you said, gets the little badge they can put on the LinkedIn profile, and then boom, they move into the matching platform. And that's where the magic happens. You can go into this matching platform as a potential board member and look for nonprofits that are looking for your expertise, that are looking for somebody like you, and that maybe match your passion areas, right, in terms of their mission, the nonprofit's mission. While you're doing that, it's like LinkedIn meets Match.com, right, but for nonprofit boards. On the other side, nonprofit executives who are looking for new board members are searching as well. So they're there, and the algorithm is matching up people that based on their desires, based on their diversity they're trying to achieve. The diversification that we built in is pretty broad, and it's based on the needs we had when we started this up. So you can diversify intentionally based on race and ethnicity, based on gender, based on age, based on industry, or based on geography. So we needed those areas to be able to intentionally diversify, and we achieved it through BoardBuild. So the matching is the fun part, it's the exciting part, and the neatest part for nonprofits is it's the free part. So the model that BoardBuild is based on is a regional partnership model. You mentioned my title and what I do for BoardBuild. Maybe we can talk a little bit about that. But if you're a nonprofit who's looking to gain new board members, you can go into BoardBuild today. If you're anywhere in the country, anywhere in Tennessee, for example, you can go in and create a profile and post your open board seats. So that's the product, is an open board seat. So that's free. And then people pay to take the training, and the training is incredibly affordable, especially if you compare it to anything else that's available in the country in terms of board training. It's a lot of board training to go through an entire setup can be as expensive as $2,500. We're talking about $200 for an individual to go through BoardBuild. And so most of them, 95% of the seats anyway, are not paid for by individuals. They're paid for by corporations or by the nonprofit agencies that are training their board members. So it's generally an organizational ticket, but we have had quite a few people take it individually. So that's kind of how the whole thing works, and the kind of supply and demand. The end result is that a region can now rely on having trained board members that understand their role, that understand how nonprofits work, populating a pool that all the nonprofits in that region can now search, surf, and pick board members for their board. So pretty exciting stuff. And we've had it underway for 4 years now in North Texas. That's given us proof of concept. It's showing us how it's going to catch on and function. It's enabled us to make improvements to the platform and to the training, the additions like the governance with DEI that I talked about. It's been proven now. And so now it's time to open it up and look for other regional partners that are looking to bring this kind of capability to their state or to their region, and then build the capacity that they want. So it's pretty cool. The model we've built enables that, empowers that, and enables the lion's share of the revenue that's generated from BoardBuild to stay in that state or region with the regional partner. So that's the neatest thing about it, is we built this to be a win-win for everybody. You know, it's kind of a B2B model. You know, we're bringing you a capability, you build the capacity you need to serve your social sector and to enable your nonprofits in your region to find their board members for free.
Go ahead and drill in deeper on that partnership and how the community can help, because you and I originally met through Higginbotham, which I think is really cool, because Higginbotham is doing, in essence, an unlimited plan where they can send employees through. So you talk about the corporate social responsibility, and it really makes a statement to say, hey, we're going to enable our team members to have access to this, to train them, to equip them so that when they step in, they can be more successful and more intentional and strategic to help make a difference with nonprofits. And also, too, when you think about employees, interns, like there's so many applications to this from a company perspective. And just like you mentioned, from a nonprofit and individual perspective, you make it extremely easy to be able to step in. So dive in and drill in deeper on that partnership and how the community can help.
Sure, thanks. The way that we built BoardBuild, I said it was a win-win, right? We structured it as a revenue sharing model. So BoardBuild supplies the platform and all of the customer support and tech support that comes with that, right? Somebody in Memphis loses their password, it gets reset by BoardBuild. The regional partner is the one who represents BoardBuild to the community. BoardBuild brought to you by the regional partner. We're not that interested in branding, you know, in a state. We want the organization that partners with us to brand in the state. And so we're helping them by giving them a capability. So they'll come in and meet with their corporate leaders. Especially, we have a growing list of corporations who are those partners I discussed with you that have agreed that they'll pay for their people to go through in a region and pay for their financial obligation when they get to a nonprofit board, which is huge because that's new money that's not currently coming into the social sector that comes into the social sector thanks to BoardBuild being a partner. So that's how it's structured in terms of a regional partner and BoardBuild and how we work. Now, companies and people who want to serve on a nonprofit board, they gain it's one of the best ways that a company can invest in CSR and getting their people out there is having them involved in the community. That's a lot of times what drives a company's interest in being in the social sector, right? Is having their leaders engaged in the community, the face of their company to the community. What better way to get your people properly trained on how to do it so they're successful? There are bad board members out there, and nobody wants their people to be one of them. So they're going to be successful, and then they get placed in a nonprofit board that fits their passion areas. It's a good fit from the word go, instead of going into a nonprofit board and having a bad experience because it's not really where your heart is, or it's not really matched with your capabilities and skills, and then you wind up leaving and going somewhere else. So the BoardBuild partnership at the corporate level helps corporations expedite and make more efficient that process of placing their people in the community to be successful community leaders and better ambassadors of the company to that community and its social sector.
I love everything you all are doing, and I think it really creates a bright future ahead on all fronts, not only for the local communities, but nationally when you look at what this means. Talk about website, social media. Where do we go to carry this conversation forward? Where do we go to start taking next steps with BoardBuild?
Great. So If there is an agency out there listening to this that has a regional or statewide reach and is interested in bringing BoardBuild to that region or that state, you can find out more by going to boardbuild.org and taking a look at the website. You can also reach out to me directly at td.smyers, that's td.smyers, at boardbuild.org, and I can arrange to do a Zoom intro, walk you through the how the thing is set up, walk you through what a partnership looks like, and then send you a bunch of information that demonstrates to you the success BoardBuild has had over 4 years in North Texas. If there's continuing interest beyond that, we set up a platform demo with BoardBuild CEO Pam Cannell, who walks through the platform and actually grants access to the interested organization, to a couple of players in that interested organization, so they can get in and play with the matching platform and actually see and take the training and get a feel for it. And then we move on like that with partnerships. If you're interested in just taking the training, you're an individual and you're wanting to do this, and this speaks to you, and we have people from coast to coast that have done this, that just want to be trained as good nonprofit board members, you can go to boardbuild.org, create an account right away, and jump right in and take the training.
Makes it easy. Well, TD, I'm excited for everything you all are doing. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Oh, man, I appreciate the opportunity to talk about BoardBuild. As you can probably tell, I'm really passionate about it because it sprang from a need, a gap that we saw, and then a bunch of smart people came together and created an answer for that gap. And I think what excites me the most, though, is that, I mean, we put a lot of resources into the development of this platform. As you know, developing software is not cheap, and production, studio quality production is not cheap. We've put all these resources into this so that organizations don't have to. You just give us a call, we partner up, and you have this instantaneously. I mean, we can start a partnership in Tennessee, for example, in 2 weeks. It can be live, generating revenue and generating qualified board members. So appreciate the opportunity to share my passion, man.
Absolutely. Make sure everyone check out boardbuild.org. TD, once again, thank you for all you and your amazing team do. Thank you for coming on the show.
Thanks, Jeremy.